Welcome back to the deep dive. We know you want the core insights on complex topics, those real aha moments, without getting lost in the weeds.
Exactly. No information overload here.
Today, we're tackling something huge. The massive change in childhood over, say, the last decade or so. From kids playing outside to, well, kids on phones.
It's a big one. We're digging into Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, specifically excerpts about what he calls the great rewiring of childhood.
The great rewiring.
Yeah, and how this shift might be fueling a rise in mental health issues for Gen Z kids born after '96.
Okay, so our mission today is to really unpack Haidt's core ideas on this rewiring and its connection to anxiety and depression in young people.
Precisely. Let's get into the nuts and bolts of his argument.
Right, so this great rewiring, when did it actually happen and what does it look like day to day?
The book really pinpoints the years between 2010 and 2015. That's when smartphones just exploded, right? Became totally normal for almost everyone to have one.
Yeah, I remember that shift. Suddenly everyone had one.
Exactly. And before that, childhood looked pretty different. Lots more unstructured playtime, kids outdoors, face-to-face stuff.
Running around the neighborhood.
Totally. That play-based childhood, Haidt argues, was crucial. Kids learn negotiation, how to sort out conflicts, physical skills too, even just figuring out basic cooperation.
Okay, so that's the before. The after is this phone-based childhood. What's the difference there?
Well, the main thing is that social life and free time moved online. It's dominated by virtual interactions.
So kids are still being social, just differently.
Kind of, but Haidt's point is they're missing out on vital, real-world stuff. Those slightly awkward, challenging physical and social experiences that actually build competence. Reading body language, tone of voice.
The subtle stuff you don't get through a screen.
Right. Plus, the online world kind of blurs the lines. Kids get exposed to adult topics, adult spaces, often way before they're ready, and parents might not even realize it.
Okay. The book then talks about 4 foundational harms from all this.
Definitely.
Feel impactful.
Yeah, these are framed as the main negative consequences. The first one is social deprivation.
Meaning less time with friends.
It's deeper than just time. It's less embodied interaction, less spontaneous talk, less physical play, less eye contact even, stuff that's apparently really key for developing social skills properly.
Got it. Okay, what's the second one?
Sleep deprivation. This one's probably not surprising. More screen time, especially right before bed.
The blue light effect, yeah.
Yeah.
And just staying up later, scrolling or gaming.
Exactly. Messes with their sleep patterns significantly.
All right, so social and sleep deprivation. What else?
Third is attention fragmentation. Think about the constant notifications switching between apps.
Yeah, it's hard not to get distracted.
Right. It chips away at the ability to concentrate deeply. Haidt cites research suggesting even just having a phone nearby hurts cognitive ability. And it makes it harder to develop executive functions like focus and self-control.
Wow, okay. And the fourth harm?
Addiction. He argues social media apps, mini games too, are designed using behaviorist tricks, like slot machines, basically.
To keep you hooked.
Yeah, variable rewards, constant novelty. It creates this cycle of wanting more. It can look a lot like gambling addiction, actually, with anxiety and irritability when you can't engage.
Okay, so those 4 harms. Social deprivation, sleep deprivation, attention fragmentation, and addiction. Now, how does the book link these directly to the rise in anxiety and depression in Gen Z?
This is where the timing really lines up, according to Haidt. He presents data showing anxiety, depression, self-harm rates among teens really taking off.
Guess when?
Early 2010s,
Right
around that great rewiring period.
Bingo. There are figures in the book showing things like college students reporting way more depression and anxiety diagnoses, emergency room visits for self-harm among younger teens. It all spikes around then.
And is this just like a U.S. thing? Or is it broader?
That's key. It's broad, seen across lots of countries, different income levels, races, educational backgrounds. It's a widespread pattern.
And he contrasts it with millennials. They went through big world events too, 9/11, the financial crisis. But their teen mental health didn't show the same sharp decline.
So the timing points more towards the phones than other potential causes.
That's the argument. The correlation with the smartphone saturation is really strong.
The book uses these terms discover mode and defend mode. Can you explain those?
Yeah, it's like 2 basic settings for the brain. Discover mode is open, curious, exploring opportunities, like a kid checking out a new park.
Uh-huh. Ready to engage.
Right. Defend mode is about spotting threats, being cautious, pulling back.
Okay.
The idea is that a traditional play-based childhood encourages discover mode,
Huh.
lots of freedom, exploring. But the phone-based world, with constant social judgment, potential online drama, less real-world freedom, it pushes kids more towards a chronic defend mode.
Making them more anxious, less open to new things.
Exactly. Always kind of braced for something negative, maybe less willing to take small, healthy risks.
That connects to another idea you mentioned, anti-fragility. What's that about?
Anti-fragility is this concept that some things don't just resist stress, they actually get stronger from it, like bones getting stronger with impact.
Okay.
Haidt argues kids are naturally anti-fragile. They need small bumps, setbacks, manageable risks to build resilience and coping skills.
Right, like falling off a bike and getting back on.
Precisely. But the phone-based childhood might not provide enough of those real-world, lower-stakes learning experiences. Online mistakes can feel huge, permanent. Real-world interactions often have quicker feedback, chances to fix things. It's just different.
Let's zoom in on social media specifically. The book seems to highlight particular issues there.
Oh, definitely. One big thing is how it encourages kids to basically become brand managers, always thinking about how they look online, how posts will land.
Performance, not just connection.
Yeah, it makes interactions feel strategic, maybe less authentic, and the time commitment. It's huge. Teens spending hours a day, some girls maybe 20+ hours a week.
Wow. It's practically a part-time job.
It is. And it's time not spent doing other things like hanging out in person. It can even strain family time. Kids notice parents distracted by their phones, too.
Uh-huh. Guilty as charged sometimes.
We all are, right. And ironically, despite being called social media, it can make kids feel more lonely or inadequate because of that constant comparison to perfectly curated online lives.
The highlight reels.
Exactly. Plus, you get things like emotional contagion moods spreading quickly online and prestige bias, where popular accounts have outsized influence, sometimes pushing extreme or unhealthy ideas.
Now, the book mentions girls were maybe hit harder initially, but boys aren't immune either.
Absolutely not. While some stats showed sharper initial rises for girls, boys' depression and anxiety rates have also gone up significantly.
What's happening with them?
There's evidence boys are also withdrawing from the real world, less time hanging out with friends in person, a trend that actually started a bit earlier but really sped up after 2010. Haidt suggests the virtual world, especially gaming, might offer boys a sense of control, competence, and connection that they feel is missing in a real world that feels increasingly restrictive or safetiest.
So games might have some benefits, but they're replacing real-world stuff.
That's the tension, yeah.
Yeah.
Cognitive benefits, maybe, but at the cost of real-world social development.
This all seems to feed into another point. This phone-based childhood might actually be blocking the transition to adulthood.
That's a really interesting part of the argument. Becoming an adult depends on having the right kinds of experiences as a teen.
Like rites of passage, which we don't really have anymore.
Exactly, but also just basic independence. He talks about local freedom, like being allowed to play around the block unsupervised around age 8, and roaming, having a wider radius by age 10 or 12.
Stuff that used to be normal but feels
Yeah.
less common now.
Much less common, yeah. And Haidt argues that without these chances for independent exploration and problem solving in the real world, kids don't build the competence and self-reliance they need for adulthood. The phone kind of keeps them tethered.
Right. And finally, what about bigger picture stuff like laws or cultural shifts?
Well, there's COPIA in the U.S., the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, meant to protect kids under 13 online.
But does it work? I mean, kids are definitely on Instagram younger than 13.
Yeah, that's the problem. Age verification is weak. Haidt cites that something like 40% of American kids under 13 are on Instagram anyway. The law isn't really keeping pace. And then there's this broader cultural idea of safetyism. The definition of safety has expanded, especially emotional safety, leading parents and schools to maybe overprotect kids from any discomfort or risk.
But that might prevent them from developing that anti-fragility we talked about.
That's the concern. Wrapping them in bubble wrap might actually make them less prepared for life's inevitable challenges.
Okay, so pulling it all together, the core argument we're getting from Haidt is that this huge, fast shift to kids living their lives through phones is a major driver behind the worsening mental health we're seeing in adolescence.
That's the crux of it, yes. Those 4 foundational harms: The social, sleep, and attention deficits, plus the addictive designs, are the mechanisms through which this great rewiring is causing damage.
It's not saying tech is all bad, but
But the way it's currently integrated, especially for younger kids with few limits, seems to be creating serious problems for their development and well-being.
this has been, wow, a really important deep dive. Definitely gives you pause.
Yeah.
Think about how drastically childhood has been reshaped. So as we finish up, what's the big takeaway question listeners should chew on?
I think, given how profound this shift is, the really critical question Haidt leaves us with is, what can we actually do? Individually as parents, collectively as communities, or through policy? What concrete steps can we take to, as he puts it, bring childhood back to earth? How do we foster healthier development for the kids coming up now in the midst of all this?
A challenging question, but a vital one. Food for thought indeed.